So, good morning, students of class 9 and also the revising students of class 10. Today, we are going to take up yet another poem in your syllabus. The name of the poem, as you can see on your screen, is Television, and this poem is written by the famous British poet Roald Dahl. Now, before we begin with this poem, let us have a look at the background of this poem as well as a little bit about the poet. So let us now first go through the introduction of this poem as taken from your treasure trove textbook. So on your screen you will see first and foremost this is the real photograph of the poet Roald Dahl, and as you can see there are some cartoon sketches around his photograph. Please remember that Roald Dahl basically wrote for children. He wrote stories and poems basically for children. He was very concerned about children, and that is something which prompts him to write even this poem, Television, which is basically a poem addressed to the British parents, advising them why they should not have the idiot box or the television in their household or in their homes, and how exactly television does damage to the minds of little children. And that is what we are going to see as the subject matter of this poem. But before we begin with the text of the poem, like I said, let's first go through a little bit about Roald Dahl. So on your screen, taken from your textbook, Roald Dahl is one of the most prolific of modern writers in English. He was a British novelist, short story writer, poet, screenwriter, fighter pilot. Remember, he was also a pilot in the Royal Air Force, British Air Force, and has a large fan following among the young readers. The poem Television takes a comic look at a serious problem among young children today. The poem warns us about the dangers of excessive television watching. He tells us, basically this is a poem addressed to the elders or the parents of the small children. Very often it so happens that parents have a lot of work at home, and because they want to be busy with their household chores, particularly the mothers, what do? They turn on the television and let the children watch TV while the mother can finish all the household work. So that is something which Roald Dahl does not advocate. He tries to tell us that we as elders should never do that kind of thing. So he tells us that the TV robs the mind of the power of imagination and warns that we will become zombies if we keep staring uninterrupted at the television for long hours. He advises us to read books, for this will enable us to discover deeper levels of joy, find fulfillment in life, and open a whole new and exciting world for us. Now, before we proceed with the text, form and language of this poem. The poem is a long one but very simple in language because this is a modern poem. Roald Dahl expired in 1990, so you can understand not very long ago. So this is a long poem but simple in language because it's written in common modern English. It follows rhymed iambic tetrameter lines throughout the poem with no stanza division. The poet has capitalized the important portions, especially when he talks about the undesired consequences of watching television. So here, most graphically, the first portion of the poem, let's read not exactly the page taken from your textbook, but the lines are the same. You can follow from the textbook as I explain. So here you can see the image of a little child sitting in front of the television set and watching a shark. So the most important thing we have learned so far as children are concerned is never let them near your television set, or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. Then in almost every house we have watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking ghastly junk. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. So this is the first portion of the poem. So I'll continue from your textbook after that. They don't climb out of the windowsill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch, like I was telling you, and wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think? To wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? It rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind, he can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairyland. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. All right, you will cry, all right, you will say, but if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. We'll answer this by asking you, what used the darling ones to do? How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? Have you forgotten? Don't you know? We'll say it very loud and slow. They used to read. They would read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. Great Scott, gadzooks, one half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Books cluttered up the nursery floor. And in the bedroom, by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens and whales, and treasure isles and distant shores, where smugglers rode with muffled oars, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships and elephants, and cannibals crouching round the pot, stirring away at something hot. It smells so good, what can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. The younger ones had Beatrix Potter, with Mr. Todd, the dirty rotter, and Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland, and Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, and just how the camel got his hump, and how the monkey lost his rump. And Mr. Toad, and bless my soul, there's Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. Oh, books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go, throw your TV set away, and in its place you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. Fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they'll now begin to feel the need of having something to read. And once they start, oh boy, you watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. They'll grow so keen, they'll wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. So this is the text of the poem. You can see the child glued to the screen of the television. Here there are some more children sitting in front of the television. Now these are old black and white photographs of the days when Roald Dahl was around. So way back in the 80s and 90s, the television sets would be like this. There were no plasma TV sets and there were no wall hanging TV sets. So you had these box type TV sets. So these are black and white photographs of that era, some 30-40 years ago, 20-30 years ago. So don't be confused. So this is what television does to a child. The child is glued to the television and never takes his or her eyes off and is lost in a dream world, in a world which is unrealistic. So Roald Dahl is asking all elders to bring the children back to reality. Give them good books to read, children's books. There are so many of them, so many good authors writing so many beautiful books for children. If the children read those books, at least they'll be able to give free rein to their imagination. Here what happens is when they are watching TV, whatever is being shown is being absorbed by the child. But if they read books, they can imagine. If you are seeing things right before your eyes, your imaginative power decreases. But if you are reading, then the picture is built up in your mind. You have images coming to your mind and that enhances your imaginative power, that gives your brain enough work to do, and that sharpens your wit and your capabilities. So that is what Roald Dahl is requesting the parents, especially the British parents. But this poem has a universal appeal. It's applicable to parents all over the world. So now let's try to understand line by line the text of the poem. We have just finished reading one quick reading of the text. Now let's read the text little by little and try to understand what Roald Dahl is actually trying to tell us. So television, I'll read from your textbook. You can see it's poem number 5 in your textbook. I've taken the exact page from the textbook. The most important thing we have learned so far as children are concerned. Nothing to explain here. It's very simple that the most important thing the poet says that he has learned, or we all as elders have learned as far as children are concerned, is that is never, never, never. And you can see that nevers are written with capitals. That's because he's trying to emphasize, or he's trying to shout those words out to us so that we listen and we pay attention to what he's trying to say. Is never, never, never let them near your television set. Don't let the children go near your television set. So that is a difficult thing, because in a house, in a family, if there is a television set, it's not possible for the elders to watch the TV alone and not let the children come near the TV, because sooner or later the children will come and sit and will watch. So he gives the second option here. He says, or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. Now we all know that television is often referred to as the idiot box. So why is it called an idiot box? The simple reason is that when you are watching television, you are turning yourself into an idiot. In what sense? You are skipping all your other activities and you are just sitting idle watching something which is happening before your eyes inside a box. So a box which turns you into an idiot is nothing but an idiot box. So don't install the television at all is Roald Dahl's advice to parents. In almost every house we have watched them gaping at the screen. So everywhere we go, because almost every house has a television, you can see the children sitting in front of the television. They loll and slop and lounge about, means they are lying on the ground, but their eyes are glued to the screen, maybe lying on the carpet or in the couch or sitting in a chair, but their eyes are glued to the screen. They are gaping at the screen. Their mouths are open because they are looking at the screen with amazement, with surprise, and they are watching whatever is being shown on television. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. So this is a bit of an exaggeration, not really that the children's eyes really pop out of their sockets, but he's just, for the sake of adding humor to the poem, he says this: last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. Just for a joke, just to make us laugh. So he writes most humorously, and that's the reason he says that last week we went to somebody's house and there we saw so many, a dozen eyeballs rolling on the floor. How was it possible? Because the children had been ogling or looking at the screen of their television with such wide open eyes that the eyeballs popped out and fell on the floor. Not that it really happened, he's just joking, but he's trying to make a point even through this joke that children watch television without batting an eyelid, and that is bad because they are actually ruining their senses, ruining their imaginative power, and children don't understand that. Elders should therefore step in and try to stop this from happening. So last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it. So just like a magician uses hypnosis, the same way the television as a device, as a scientific device or an invention, modern invention, hypnotizes the children until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. So whatever is being shown is referred to as the shocking and ghastly junk, something which Roald Dahl does not approve of. What the children are watching, the shows that they are watching, are actually ghastly, actually shocking according to Roald Dahl. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. Children are normally naughty and they are up to some mischief or the other in the household. If they don't have any proper thing to do, they will just be up to something or the other, and so they will climb out of the window, sit in the windowsill, or they will start fighting among themselves. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch. So if you have television, what happens? Mother can freely go and spend her time in the kitchen cooking the lunch because she knows that the children won't fight, the children won't climb out of the window because the TV is on and they're all glued to the TV screen. They will keep totally quiet and keep watching TV while she can finish cooking the lunch. And not only finish cooking the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink, she can even finish other household chores like washing the dishes kept in the kitchen sink. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved tot? Tot means tiny tot, little kid. Tot means a small kid. But have you ever stopped to think? He's asking the parents, he's asking the mothers that in turning on the television and letting them watch TV, what damage are you doing to them? How much damage are you actually doing to the brains of your own children? Have you ever thought? And then he shouts. That's why everything is in block capitals. He is being very loud. He's making a point. He's putting emphasis on these lines. That's why he writes them in capital letters. It rots the sense in the head. It rots the capability of sensing things. That children should grow up to become sensible human beings. Well, that will not be possible if they are watching television at such an early age. And it's a proven fact. Researchers and scientists have time and again proved it or have stated that television actually does more harm to children than good. So it rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. So I told you already about imagination. So they lose their imaginative power. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind. He can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairyland. So, if you tell them a fairy tale, if you give them a book which has fairy tale in it, they will not understand what a fairyland is, what a fantasy is, because they are not able to imagine. Creating images in the mind is not possible for such children who are accustomed to seeing ready-made images before their eyes. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. So he is comparing the brain with cheese and using a simile. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. Once again, meaning the same thing, that the children lose the capability to think. So anything which is disused or is lying unused for a long time starts becoming rusty or gets totally out of order. And that is exactly what is going to happen to the brains of your children. He cannot think, he only sees. All right, you'll cry. All right, you will say. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? So as parents, you will probably argue with me and you will probably bring up this point. Suppose you are asking us to remove the television. Suppose we remove it. How are we going to entertain our tiny tots, our little children? Please explain. We'll answer this by asking you. So we are going to give you the answer to that question. The answer is also in the form of a question. What used the darling ones to do? Tell me, what did the little children who were darlings of their parents, what did the little children do in the times when there was no television? In the olden days, how did the children grow up? In what way did the parents take care of their darling little children when there was no television? Television is something new which has been brought in by a scientific invention in the recent times, in the modern era. What about the children of the past? What did they do when there was no television? How used did they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? So how was it possible to keep the little children contented or satisfied when this terrible monster, he calls television a monster, was invented, when this monster was not even invented? How did the children manage then? The previous generation of children, how did they manage then, and how did the parents manage their children? Have you forgotten? Don't you know? We will say it very loud and slow. Have you forgotten? Don't you know? Well, we are going to point it out once again to you in case if you have forgotten. They used to read loud and slow. Therefore, block letters, and then you have those 3 dots, 3 dots and 3 dots. Because there are pauses in between. They used to read. They would read and read and read and read and then proceed to read some more. So that is how in the olden times, when there was no television, children were kept busy, children were kept entertained by their parents, because parents would give them storybooks to read, and there was a never-ending list of storybooks. Great Scott, Gadzooks. One half their lives was reading books. The nursery shelves held books galore. Galore means a big treasure house. Such a big stock of books, you could say. The nursery shelves. Nursery is the area of the house where children are usually to be found. It is their room where the nursemaid takes care of them, and the children are together and they have all their playthings and all their books and all their study materials. So that is called the nursery. Books cluttered up the nursery floor, and in the bedroom, by the bed, more books were waiting to be read. Such wondrous, fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens, and whales and treasure isles. Reference to Treasure Island. Reference to so many different children's stories in which you get to read about dragons and gypsies and queens. So all sorts of books with all sorts of stories, fantasy and fairy tales. And distant shores where smugglers rowed with muffled oars, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships and elephants. So all these were components of the stories to be found in such books for children. And cannibals. Cannibals are a particular tribe or clan of humans of Africa basically, who eat human flesh. So stories of cannibals crouching round the pot. They are cooking something in a pot, stirring away at something hot. It smells so good. What can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. So these are the different characters taken from different storybooks for children. You have a whole list of that. And Beatrix Potter is a famous children's author, and she wrote a number of books for children. So he gives reference to the author of children's books, and then he talks about the different characters which are to be found in the different storybooks for children. The younger ones had Beatrix Potter with Mr. Todd, the dirty rotter, and Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Bland, and Mrs. Tiggywinkle, and Just How the Camel Got His Hump. Famous stories for children. How the camel got his hump. And How the Monkey Lost His Rump. Even that is another book for children. And Mr. Toad, Wind in the Willows. So taken from character from Wind in the Willows, another book for children. And Mr. Toad and Bless My Soul. There's Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole, also characters from the same storybook, The Wind in the Willows. Oh, books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away. And in its place, you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks. Who will give the dirty looks? The children will give the dirty looks. If you remove the television and if you install a shelf full of books, children won't like it. Even I know that children won't like it, just as you know the children won't like it. The screams and yells, the bites and kicks, these are going to be the reactions of the children when you remove the television and give them books. They will scream, they will yell, they will even bite you and kick you. And children hitting you with sticks. They will even try to throw tantrums and try to hit you with sticks. Fear not. But as parents, you must not fear. Because we promise you that in about a week or two, this will happen for initial 1 or 2 weeks. But we can promise you one thing, that within a week or two, the mentality of these children will then start changing. When they will not have the television and all they will have will be the books, their mentality will start changing. Of having nothing else to do, when the children will not have anything else to do, they'll now begin to feel the need of having something to read. And once they start, oh boy, you watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. So once they start reading, oh boy, it'll be amazing, it'll be wonderful, because you will see how they will enjoy reading the books. Their hearts will be filled with joy the more they read. They'll grow so keen, they'll wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine. So they will become so interested in books that they themselves will start wondering what they had seen earlier in that ridiculous machine, meaning the television. That nauseating, foul, unclean, repulsive television screen. So that is something which is nasty, bad, unclean, in every way negative. The reference here is to the television screen. The children will also start feeling that the television screen is something very nauseating, something very foul, and something very unclean. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. And so, when these kids later on start enjoying and reading books, they will thank you. Though they will throw tantrums when you remove the TV now, but within a few weeks, they will start thanking you that you have removed the television and you have replaced the television with books. So these books are going to make them very, very happy. Okay, so this is what the poet is trying to tell us in this poem, and I have just explained the text of the poem, and I have told you about the background of the poem. And this is a beautiful poem, no doubt, and an eye-opener here by Roald Dahl, who is the poet of this poem. So we have just finished reading one more poem from our syllabus, Television by Roald Dahl. I hope all of you have understood whatever I have explained. So that's it for now. Thank you very much.